Welcome to the Fantasy Football Profit Podcast, hosted by Craig Phillips and Jeff Torrey. Visit us at fantasyfootballprofit.com. And now your hosts, Craig and Jeff.
Welcome everyone to the Fantasy Football Profit Podcast. I'm Craig Phillips, joined as always by Jeff Torrey. And today we're here for Wide Receiver Week. Now, Jeff, into the wide receiver rankings episodes. We'll do our top 15 today, but hopefully it goes well because we are actually in separate locations today. One of the the third time out of almost 100 podcasts that we haven't been in the same room to record, I think. So,
yeah, it feels a bit strange without having you right by my side.
It does.
Buddy.
It's a little different, but we're definitely want to keep getting these episodes out to everybody, especially this time of year. This is the time of year where you need these rankings episodes, not even necessarily about the ranks, but just about the players and all that good stuff, all the news coming out, all the moving people around. So we got top 15 today. We're pretty much, consensus-wise, we're pretty close on all these. So there's not going to be any major surprises in our top 15. We're not going too crazy. And wide receivers are so deep. So once we get through this top 15 list, I bet you there's going to be a lot of people that are wondering where their guy is. You know what I mean? We're going to miss some names here in the top 15, but I would say after the top 15, the next 7, 8 guys we easily could all put in there. I wouldn't mind putting them in there and just got to make a decision at some point, basically. All right, but before we get into that, make sure you check us out on Twitter at the FF Profit. We're on Instagram at Fantasy Football Profit. The website's fantasyfootballprofit.com. You can always send us a question there at fantasyfootballprofit@gmail.com. We got a bunch of questions coming in. We're going to do a mailbag episode Friday. We've already been looking over some of these questions and actually discussing them already, trying to get, figure out the best answers for everybody, make sure we get, help everyone with their draft. So we're going to do all of that for you guys. But before we get into the actual rankings, we might as well hit some news up here, Jeff. What do you got? You got some news for me?
Yeah, what do you think about this Cutler news where he is now helming the Miami Dolphins?
I don't think it's going to affect much. It's funny because I think Cutler's going to all of a sudden maybe even get drafted higher than just because he got signed. It's a weird thing. But if he had stayed with the Bears or signed with anybody, if he had signed with the Dolphins in the preseason, he wouldn't be getting, or the offseason, he wouldn't be getting drafted at all, probably. But, really, what's this do, though, to Parker, Landry, Stills? Does it affect them, you think?
Yeah.
Who do you think takes the biggest jump, if anything, if there is a jump to be had?
Yeah, I don't know if it really affects anyone too much. I think, if anything, it helps my thought that I think maybe Devontae Parker can really take another step forward, because I feel like Devontae Parker is very similar to the wide receivers he's had in the past, big and athletic. So I think actually it could help him because he can get down the field. Cutler has a huge arm. That's never in question. It's more of his decision making. So I think Devontae Parker, this could actually aid in his development, actually.
Yeah, Cutler always had those big receivers to throw to, Marshall, Jeffrey, those kind of guys. Seemed like maybe that was just because that's who was there, that's who he threw to. Maybe he didn't have that Landry type. I guess that's to be seen, but he feels like a kind of guy who's going to throw it around a little bit. I just don't know. It's not enough to move the needle, though. Really, I still like Parker, though. It's not enough to hurt my, liking of Parker for the year. That's pretty much how it is. This doesn't affect much in that way. I'm just going to put Cutler right into where I had Tannehill ranked, I think, and call it a day.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that's about where he deserves to be anyway. Cutler wasn't some, huge fantasy quarterback. He had a few years where he played really, really well as far as fantasy goes. But, the majority of the time he's kind of mediocre at best. So I don't think this changes much. He has a couple of good wide receivers, but they still have a good run game. Yeah.
Yeah, he's never quite, I feel like, lived up to what he could have been. And at this point, I doubt he will. But, hey, he's serviceable. Get him on maybe a bye week. 2 QB leagues for sure. He's going to be on somebody's roster, but that's about it. All right, what else we have this week? Obviously, Quincy Enunwa, I think, is the big news here. Everyone kind of had him as maybe a sleeper receiver just because of, someone at New York had to get the targets. It was going to probably be Enunwa, but now he's gone, out for the year, looks like with a neck injury. Is there anybody there? Or are you just, who is there?
No, taking wide receiver 1 right now, I mean, the speculation is Robbie Anderson is going to take it, and I try not to laugh. I mean, I don't even know anything about Robbie Anderson. I mean, Enunwa was going to be a unknown, number 1 wide receiver on a very, very poor offense. I have no idea what to expect from this guy. So
no,
it's
Anderson showed a little. Yeah, he had some flashes last year. I mean, very, very short flashes from Anderson. Maybe he could do something, but I mean, there's nothing to be excited about with Josh McCown throwing him the ball. I mean, they're just going to use these young guys. That Stewart out of Alabama, that receiver, maybe they'll try him in there. They're just going to try whatever. I mean, shoot, they're using with Powell and Forte out right now. They're using Elijah McGuire as their number 1 running back. So who knows? They might just go all young. And just be completely. You're not going to touch anybody. I mean, I think without a number 1 receiver, I mean, how are teams going to respect the pass at all? They're going to just stack the box against Powell and Forte.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one more thing that they're going to have to deal with. I feel that whole offense is in just a bad way. I mean, not only is your quarterback situation a complete mess, and I have nothing against Josh McCown, but space filler until they can find a franchise guy. And now one kind of bright spot where they thought maybe they could bring this wide receiver along and he could turn into something down the road in Enunwa. And now he's gone for the season with a neck injury, which sounds ominous at best. And then Powell and Forte aren't exactly young. Forte is older, but Powell's like, 28 anyway? So, I mean...
20, yeah, it's going to be 29. So maybe, why not use that? Maybe use McGuire. Maybe they
might get to go. I mean, right now both are hurt, Forte and Powell, and they're talking about how right now Elijah McGuire is getting all the first-team reps because no one else is available. So who knows? Maybe he'll jump in there and they'll be their guy.
All right. Some other news, I guess, would be maybe Andrew Luck stuff here. I mean, what do you got on Luck? It's sounding...
No, I mean, it's just one more strike against a guy. Obviously, he's very, very special when he's in there, but he hasn't been able to throw yet. And then, hey, he might miss week 1. It feels like one of these situations where they start dragging it out, and all of a sudden he's missing 2 weeks guaranteed, and then maybe it'll be 3, and every time that a week goes by without him in there, not only does it hurt his stature in the fantasy, but it's hurting T-Wise, and it's hurting Moncrief. So that whole offense is really the linchpin is Luck. So if he's not in there, I think it hurts everyone's value. And personally for me, and we'll get into it, but I did have to drop Moncrief down a bit because I think it's scary not having that talented guy in there.
Yep. And he's not going to make today's episode, so we don't have to worry about him till Thursday's episode. Yeah, he's dropped for me as well. Just the whole situation,
Yeah, it's just an unknown.
Up in the air.
And
other than that, though,
who is going to take his spot if he's not able to go week 1, or if he misses multiple weeks? Who knows? I mean, the guy behind him right now is Tolzien. So I mean,
yeah,
I don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, once again, I mean, are you going to lean on the run heavy? Does that mean, Gore is going to get a ton of carries? Is he going to be worn down? Maybe the backup, Marlon Mack, will actually see reps early if they're going to run that much. I mean, the Luck thing really is interesting because I think it changes the whole dynamic of the team. So that one is something I'm going to look into a lot, and probably something that's going to change my rankings quite a bit if Luck misses multiple games.
Some other just minor news. Anquan Boldin signed with the Bills. I guess if anything, he's not really relevant, but maybe it takes some catches away from Zay Jones possibly. But I don't know if it's much of anything there. I mean, how much can Boldin really do? I think he's going to be a red zone target. He's almost basically like a tight end. He's like an Antonio Gates, I think. Use him in the red zone, that kind of thing. So I'm not expecting much there. And then Vikings finally, they activated Latavius Murray from the PUP list, so he's finally going to get into some preseason action, some training camp, maybe see if he has anything, if he's going to be able to take any work away from Dalvin Cook, who's been looking good. So other than that, that's about it. That's all I got.
Yeah.
Might as well move right to the episode here. Got our top 15 ranks. I guess it's probably no surprise here that Antonio Brown ended up number 1. You can't go wrong with him. That's pretty much it. Antonio Brown, he's going to catch, ridiculous amount of passes. I think Martavis Bryant being there only helps him because what did he have last year opposite of him? Sammy Coates, Eli Rogers. No one could take away the defense's attention, and he still did what he did. With Bryant there, it's just going to, I think, open it up more. You can't go wrong with Antonio Brown.
The guy really is unstoppable, and you just look at the past 4 years and what his positional rank was as a wide receiver. And the last 4 years he was 8th overall, then he was first, and then 3rd. So not only do you get a wide receiver that can, get you points game to game, but he is the safest bet at wide receiver that you can possibly make. And hence why I had to put him, begrudgingly, I had to put him number 1. He's just too good. He's just too good. And he's too safe. And, he really can do it all. So, and Roethlisberger is back. That offense, like you said, hasn't changed besides you maybe got a little more potent with Brian on the other side of him. So, got to love him. He should be the first wide receiver off the board, and that's not going to be a surprise to anyone.
Yeah, and the only question really becomes with Brown is where do you pick him in the first round if you're in a snake draft? And I've been starting to see him go ahead of Zeke a lot as the number 3 because of Zeke, basically because of just the looming suspension here possibly for Zeke. So Brown ends up going ahead of Zeke, but I'm still not doing that. Personally, I still going to go Zeke, even if it's like a 2-game suspension. I guess for me, the question becomes, and this is pretty much just our podcast decision here because this doesn't seem to be the norm, is it's Antonio Brown or LeSean McCoy. It seems like consensus-wise, it's Brown over McCoy. Are you thinking that, or do you still go McCoy over Brown and get those running backs?
Yeah,
it's a tough one, right?
Yeah, and Antonio Brown, like I said, he's safe. So if you wanted to go that route, I couldn't fault anyone for it. For me, I'm still going running back, and that's only because running back is so much more difficult to get. I'm not saying that McCoy is necessarily a better player than him, but I think it's easier to make up for wide receiver. So I'm still going for a running back, and tell you the truth, I might even go Melvin Gordon over him. I might even go almost 5 running backs deep. That's how seriously I take the running back position this year. And if you don't get one of those 5 guys, it becomes very difficult to not be hurting at running back or get some guys that you're not too sure of. Like I said, Antonio Brown, if you're going to go wide receiver, as safe as you can get. So I don't mind that, but me personally, I would go running back.
Yeah, we're actually going against the norm with that, which kind of surprised me. Just running back gets ugly early, and so I just think you need that first-round guy. So I still go McCoy over Brown, but I've been seeing people go Brown, but I guess that's what you want to do. Hopefully somebody falls there in the second for you. That's pretty much all I can say. It's just it ends up being usually like a Todd Gurley, and that's not what I want as my first running back.
No, so. And it scares me more about the second running back. You have Gurley.
Yeah, true.
That's great, but the one you're going to get after that's the one that scares me.
Well, it ends up being like you have to go it's like Gurley, Fournette, or it's like Gurley, Lamar Miller, Fournette, Crowell, those kind of guys. You get 2 of those guys, which I guess could be fine, especially if Fournette is something, and if Gurley steps up. Then it works great. That's the chance you're taking. But I'm not sold on those 2 guys yet. But it could work out great. It really could.
Yeah. I think that's kind of how it's going right now. I'm kind of terrified that more people will go for the running back, kind of seeing how shallow it is, and then especially if you're in the top, say you're right after number 3, or you're number 3, and you have to decide between a suspended Zeke or a McCoy. All of a sudden, that's a long time to get back around to you. That's where that's terrifying to think that Lamar Miller has to be in my starting lineup every single week for me. And I know people love Lamar Miller, but that's when it drops off and gets really risky for me.
Yep. We'll talk about it on another show here where we're talking about an auction draft review of the auction we just did, just to give people just an idea of what's going on in an auction. But Lamar Miller in a $200 budget went for what, $50 because running backs were gone. That is an insane price to me, just completely crazy. But it kind of shows that running back is just, I think people realize, there is nobody left. We got to do something, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and that's a good side note. But it's very true. And if you're in an auction, you will hit points where it's the last of a tier, the last of a position, and people have to pay whatever they have to pay. So you don't want to put yourself in that in that that corner.
We'll do that on another show. Get some auction stuff in there. So, all right, number 2, it's Julio Jones. Actually, here,
really,
my number
Julio?
2. Yes, my number 2. Your number 4.
Killing me, Craig.
Yeah, and it's Julio for me. And actually, this would have been like a tie consensus-wise, but the tiebreaker goes to Julio between him and the next guy on our list.
Oh, gotcha.
And it's just, I think, I just have, for some reason, I think I mean, it's hard to say. It's just like a gut feeling, which is never, I mean, guess always the greatest thing to go off in fantasy, but I just see a healthy season for Julio. And if he has a healthy season, he's going to be way up there. And that's pretty much what this is for me. This is me basing it off of a healthy Julio Jones. And I think you're probably basing it off of, you've seen Julio Jones' health problems. It's always something minor, but there's always something there. So I see why people would be kind of hesitant. I mean, still one of the top guys, but that's why you might pick the guys below him a little bit higher. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, he fell to number 4 to me, or fell to number 4 for my rankings. But at the same time, when you look at, you know, his positional rank over the years, if you just go off the last 3, he went 8th, 2nd, and then 6th as far as wide receiver rank. And he missed 3 games within that, 2 last season and then 1 in 2014. So it's not so much that he misses games when he's hurt. He's just always a little bit hobbled. He still puts up crazy numbers. If you're, you know, nitpicking, for me, it's kind of for some reason, he doesn't catch as many touchdowns as these other top wide receivers do.
Yeah, that's true.
And he does always seem to get hobbled of late. So you're never really dealing with 100% of Julio, which would be terrifying to see on a game-to-game basis.
Yeah, it's in this. I just think if he stays healthy, this guy's going to be unreal. And so that's why he's there. But, I mean, these top guys are all really, really good. So, I mean, I would take any of these top about probably 4 or 5 guys and be completely fine with it. It's just, I'll go Julio this time.
And we'll get to it in a sec, but what do you think for tiers-wise? Do you think there is 5 guys for the first tier, or would you cut it off earlier?
I mean, honestly, a lot of people I've been seeing it more are going like a 3-person tier. I still think it's probably to me, it's actually like a 5-person tier, which is going to be different from your 5. I know that already.
Oh, really?
Based off our ranks.
Oh, yep, I know who.
And it's just the difference. It's going to be, you know, you're going to have Dez. I'm not going to have Dez. That's the only difference in probably the top. You're going to have Dez. I'm going to have AJ. That's the difference we're going to have.
Gotcha. So, actually, I lied then. I would take I don't know how I counted 5, but I would do 4 actually. I would say it would cut off right before those guys.
And I still go 5 because I have a different 5 than you. I have a different 4 than you.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So that's the only difference. But it's very, very close. There is not much of a difference. To me, it's still Antonio Brown. He's almost like not a full tier ahead of these guys, but you know what I mean? He's almost like slightly ahead. Not much, but slightly, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about it. So it's Julio, and then I guess our number 3, it's Odell Beckham, is our number 3 player. He's both of our number 3 players in our actual ranks. And, I mean, I see the people talking about Brandon Marshall there, Evan Ingram, now Sterling Shepard, who knows what his injury status is going to be, but they're saying that's going to take away targets from Odell Beckham, and I don't see it. If Odell Beckham's out there and he has less attention, it's only going to help Odell Beckham in my mind. I just don't get that whole narrative of Brandon Marshall's there, so now Odell Beckham's going to suffer a little bit, and I don't see it. I don't know. I don't see that.
I mean, where else is he going to throw it to? I mean, you have a rookie tight end, and your run game is brand new. I mean, you have Paul Perkins actually taking a feature back role for the first time. You have Eli, who likes to throw it a lot. And Odell Beckham is by far, and I say this by far because it's important, because Brandon Marshall's not the old Brandon Marshall. He's not a dominant wide receiver anymore. He's a wonderful number 2. And I think he will take pressure off of Odell, like Craig said. But I think it's going to be the Odell Beckham show once again. And the last 3 years that he's been in the league for 3, he's finished 5th twice, and then last year he finished 4th overall in wide receiver. The guy is, I mean, he's just phenomenal. And he can put up week-winning games. I mean, he really is that kind of special player. And the scary part is he could easily be the number 1 wide receiver, and I wouldn't blink an eye. he's just not as safe as, say, the other couple of guys above him. But Odell being number one is not that far off.
No, not at all. I could see a season where he's the number one guy. That wouldn't surprise anybody. But you could see a season where he seems to be an emotional player. You know what I mean? You can see that something happened with that. It's Odell Beckham. You just don't quite know. All right, number 4 is Mike Evans. He's your second ranked player. He's my 5th ranked player. I've actually dropped him a couple spots. I didn't drop him because of basically anything about him. I dropped him because I like players below him better. That's the only reason he actually dropped. He's going to be great. I mean, what was your reasoning for having him so high? It's basically the targets are going to be there pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only reason people put him a little bit lower, he's still usually in the top 5, kind of like where you have him. But most of the argument against him is the fact that his targets are not going to be anywhere close to where they were last year. And he was a target monster. He got a ton of them. But I actually think with this added kind of weapons on the offense, I think it will take a little pressure off of him. He's not going to be the only guy catching balls. Last year he had 96 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 12 TDs. I don't see how – I really don't see – I don't think it's going to fall off that much. I think he's 6'5". He's a huge guy. He's a red zone target. I think 12 TDs is very repeatable for this individual person. I think Jameis Winston can make another step forward as a quarterback, which can only benefit him. And I think with Deshaun Jackson stretching the field, he actually might be able to get a few more receptions. I do worry about his yards maybe falling off a little bit, but not a lot. And last year, 12 TDs got this guy to be the number 1 wide receiver, in all fantasy football. So having him number 2, I don't think is a stretch personally. The other guys do come with upside, but you could kind of make that, for anyone. I think any one of these 4 guys could be number 1 this year. And my guess is Mike Evans is going to be a TD monster once again. If he repeats those yards, he's probably going to be number 1.
Yeah, and again, it's the same argument as with Odell Beckham. People are saying, "Oh, now I got Deshaun Jackson there. OJ Howard. They're going to take away targets." No, I just feel like that opens everything up more. In an elite player like that, he's just going to be more open. He's going to get more opportunity to really dominate. I hate that argument the other way. Only they put somebody else there. It's not like, okay, shoot, if you put Odell Beckham opposite of him, maybe he'll take away some targets. You know what I mean? But you're not putting a player of the same caliber on the other side. That's the difference to me. And unless you do that, it's not going to take away.
Exactly.
It's going to help.
Really, OJ Howard's a rookie once again. As much as talented as he may be, rookie tight ends usually take a little while to develop. And how many more targets is he going to get than last year's tight end? And then Deshaun Jackson he doesn't get that many balls thrown his way, right? He makes it on 50. Yeah, exactly.
He's just going to stretch the field.
50 grabs. And do you think that's going to be that much different between throwing to, Humphreys last year and the kind of, the guys that rounded out that roster that are still there? But so I don't think it's going to hurt him at all.
Yeah.
In fact, I think it will help him. So,
no.
Like I said, I think it'll probably be around the same range. I think he might be able to get a few more receptions. I think he could have hit 100. I just don't know if that yardage will quite be there because I think maybe he'll take a few shorter passes here and there.
All right, number 5 is going to be A.J. Green. Ends up being our number 5th player. He's my 4th, your 6th. I just kind of really – I think A.J.'s going to have a big year. You look at the stats from last year and take it over 16 games, and it was going to be a ridiculous season. Don't know if he can sustain that kind of pace quite, but I can see just big things happening this year. I think they're going to have a little better running game too. It just might help everything in that offense, possibly. It's just I'm big on AJ right now, and it's just kind of that's the only reason Mike Evans actually dropped for me is just because AJ passed him. It's not Mike dropped. It's just AJ. I just really, really think it's going to be a great season. I don't know. I'm just thinking there's going to be big things happening there.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do but love AJ Green. I don't know. It's very hard because I feel, I feel like that was a cutoff right before him. I feel like 1 through 4 cut off, and then I feel like it's AJ and Dez. Him and Dez, to me, are very, very similar players. I think AJ probably has more upside for yardage. Makes up for that in TDs, especially with the Elliott suspension looming, but we'll get to that. But when he's healthy, when he plays a full 16-game schedule, The last 3 times he's played a full schedule, he's been the 4th wide receiver, 5th, and 8th. The 2014, and then obviously last year, he missed a combined 9 games. I guess that's a little bit of a worry, but supposedly he's healthy. I'm going to take his word for it. He's obviously once again, just like any of these players, probably the most dangerous player on the field when he's in the game. And like you said, I think Mixon and, having Hill and Gio, if they get that run game, I think it actually will help him. And I think same thing with John Ross. I think he's the Deshaun Jackson of that. So he can stretch the field. AJ can get open a little bit easier. Yeah, it's a tough one. When you start getting right here, I think it's a little bit jumbled, and all I can do is give the guy love.
Yep. Number 6 is Dez. We just talked about it a little bit. He's your 5th player. That's what you have him ahead of AJ, but he's my 7th. He dropped just a spot for me to 7. But it's still, he's going to, if he stays healthy, I think he's going to be really good. I guess my hesitation is, I guess it can't be a hesitation. He's still a top 7 wide receiver for me. He's our 6th. It's not really a hesitation. It's just how good is Dak Prescott, I guess. I just need to see more from Dak. I think he's going to be good enough to make Dez a really good player. But that's the only hesitation, I guess. But again, if you take his numbers over a 16-game stretch, they're really impressive. Again, like people are looking at it like he had 50 like no catches basically. It seems like, but he didn't play all those games. He stretched that out, and those touchdowns are there. And I just see it's probably going to be a little better with Dak this year. A little bit, a year under the belt now. I think they should be a little better, but I guess if that's the hesitation, it's just maybe it's the quarterback. That's why I actually dropped him 1 spot below Jordy. I put Jordy ahead of him because of how good that offense in Green Bay is, but it's not much of a difference.
Dez is one that, because of the Elliott news, I actually felt secure in putting him above AJ and Jordy. I almost moved him down when I thought Elliott was going to play a full season, because I think that does hurt a bit because it really is so efficient, that run game behind that line. But Dez, just like AJ, he has had some battles with injury. It was the last 2 years. He missed 3 games last year, and then 7 games the year before that. But the 3 years before that, he was completely healthy for an entire season. And much like AJ, he was the 3rd best wide receiver, 7th, and then 4th. So, the big playability is insane. Yep. And I worry a little bit less about the quarterback situation. He was very efficient to throw a few more interceptions and, probably go through a little bit more of a sophomore slump. Not saying he won't be good quarterback, but I'm not sure if he'll put up the numbers he did last year. But he still threw 8 touchdowns to Dez, and that's with him missing 3 games, and that's with Dez really being hobbled for many more. So obviously they already have a good rapport. He almost went for 800 yards, and especially if they have to lean on him and I don't know how many games it's going to be, but the last thing I heard was possible 4-game suspension for Elliott. If that happens, they're going to have to lean on him, and they're going to lean on him anytime they go to the air. I don't know. I think the situation that he is in is very, very good, and he's also a very, very physical wide receiver. So he wins a ton of jump balls, and just throwing it up for grabs in the corner of the end zone when you're anywhere near the red zone is just always a good plan. So that's why he kind of edges these other guys out. But once again, AJ and even Jordy, very, very close.
And actually, even me having him at 7 and stuff, I think that's actually higher than some people. I haven't seen him lower for some reason sometimes. I don't understand that. I still think he's a talent. He's above these, next guys after our next guy, Jordy. I think he's still above the rest of them. I could see that people are freaking out a little bit because he has been injured for the past 2 seasons. So I get that. Like, if you want to downgrade him for that, I totally understand. Who hasn't been injured? Right, I swear everyone's injured.
Exactly. Jordy, blew out his knee 2 years
ago. That's what next guy, Jordy. He's my 6th, you're 7th. Jordy's been injured, and he's getting a little bit up there in age. I guess that's the main hesitation with Jordy Nelson is the age and waiting for him to kind of fall off because it's nothing else. There's no hesitation about how good he was last year. There's no hesitation about the offense he's in, the quarterback he plays with. That's all great. It's just, is he going to hit that cliff where he's just kind of not the same player? That's the worry. I don't think it'll happen this year. I don't think we saw any signs of that at all last year. Usually at least you get some kind of indication, and I didn't see anything last year. That would tell me he's not going to be one of the top receivers. He's just not going to be, number 2 like he was last year? Maybe not going to be number 2, but he's still a top 10.
Yeah, I'm not that worried about his age. I'm on your bandwagon, if you will. The guy's very, very good. Obviously, he bounced back from his knee injury in 2015. So, unless you can't really worry about the after effects of something like that. Are you worried that he's going to get really slow in one offseason? He's still playing with one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. That offense is so potent. And on top of that, Aaron Rodgers and him have just been unbelievable in the red zone. So his TD production is through the roof. So even if it drops a little bit, he's still, like you said, he'll still end up probably being top 10, if not a top 5 guy. And
I'm not worried about the rest of the guys around there because there's so many targets to go around. So there's no worry.
It's kind of crazy because the last 4 seasons he's played a full season. So 4 out of 6 years he's played all 16 games, and he was the second overall wide receiver 3 of those times, and then he was 12th once. So it just shows you how crazy potent him and Rodgers have been together, and for a long time now.
All right. So to me, the next guy, this is the start of probably the third tier. I think those top 7 are the top 7, and we had them in different orders, but we had the same top 7. This is where we hit where there's more hesitation, I would say. Number 8's Amari Cooper, my 8th, your 9th. And with Cooper, I guess there's more hesitation is just because he's been good, but he hasn't been great, really great like we think he can be. And I think most of that is just his red zone production has been terrible. The guy doesn't catch touchdowns. And I guess you would think that just seems to be an anomaly, and he has to jump up there and get at least some more. It can't go. Crabtree's touchdown rate in the red zone is so much better than Cooper's. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. I have to see that increasing.
Yeah, and it's true. His rookie year he caught 6 touchdowns, and then this past year he only caught 5. And especially being a number 1 wide receiver and being as athletic as this guy is, I thought that would be something that, it can increase, right? That wouldn't be that far off where they could throw a few more balls to him and all of a sudden he's at 8. And that would be in the ballpark of where I would expect him to be. The good thing about him is he's trending in the right direction. I realize TD fell off by 1, but, not a huge red flag. But his yardage, it went up by, about 100 yards. I guess they stayed kind of pat between rookie and sophomore season, but as far as his position in the rank, he started his rookie season, he was 24th overall, and then his sophomore season, he was 12th, which was a pretty giant jump. And if they start giving him a little more work, and especially Derek Carr getting that big contract, we think he could also take a step forward, which is always an important aspect to look at. What's your quarterback doing? Hence why we love people that play with Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees. If Derek Carr takes that next step, I think Amari Cooper, I think it's a no-brainer that this guy is going to be a top 10 and probably for years to come. So I'm just kind of waiting for him to step up and kind of be the man. But right now, Crabtree is kind of his equal, which I wasn't expecting even his sophomore year.
Well, we've talked about before on this show about the 3rd, 4th year wide receiver breakouts, and I think, he's been really good for those, first couple of years. So maybe this is where he really takes that jump. And I think we both think it's there. The possibility's there. This is not a player I would be surprised if he ended up in the top 3 at the end of the year. I think he's that talented. So
yeah, I do too. I think it really comes down to touchdowns. Really. You like I said, you add a couple touchdowns and you add another 100 yards, and he's right up there with the big boys.
Yeah, I wish I could credit this because I can't remember where I read or heard this stat. It was I can't remember the exact number, but he had basically the same amount of red zone targets as Seth Roberts did last year.
Oh, man.
Right? I don't know what that means. Does it mean that is he? There's no way he's not good in the red zone. I don't understand how a player like Cooper can be that good and not be good in the red zone. It's just something's off on that. I think it's just something that will be corrected. I don't know. He's too good. It's going to be corrected, and he doesn't even have to be amazing at it and get all the touchdowns. But if he just gets 8 to 10 touchdowns, it just increases his value that much more.
Yeah, and
number 9. Oh,
no.
I'm gonna move on. It's hard to do this when we're not. It's harder to do this when we're not in the same
I know.
room. Don't have these visual cues, you know. Well, let's go number 9. This is where I actually get a little hesitation. It's T.Y. Hilton, my 10th, your 8th right now. And I guess the hesitation, it's Andrew Luck's the hesitation. It's not even Hilton himself. It's just, what is this situation going to be? If Tolzien starts here as the quarterback week 1, I mean, I can see week 1, if Tolzien's in there, T.Y. Hilton's going to be ranked about 20th in week 1 rankings for us. You know, it's this all depends on if Andrew Luck is there.
Yeah. And T.Y. has been unbelievable. I mean, he gets so much yardage that I have to believe, even if it's Tolzien, he's still going to get a lot of targets. He's not going to go away. He's the number 1 wide receiver, and they're going to need to throw it. So he's not going to fall off completely. So it really depends on how many games we're looking at Luck to miss. The only reason T.Y. didn't fall for me, because I think I stayed pat on him, is because I think the other guys below him do come with a few more question marks. And I think T.Y. is good enough to suffice. And he doesn't really need to do it with touchdowns. So like I said, he does it with yardage. So I think he can do that no matter who the quarterback is. So I'm not as worried, especially if it's only going to be a game or two.
But it's for some reason, he's just this player that I never get excited about. And I don't have a reason for it. It's just he's just, maybe because I think what happens is I'm never excited about back end, either wide receiver 1s or RB1s, if they actually have to be my wide receiver 1 or RB1. You know what I mean? I want them as my 2, which doesn't quite work that way. But I think that's why I don't get excited. I always want a top end wide receiver 1 or running back 1, not a back end guy. You know, this is my 2. I guess maybe that's where I get this kind of strange thing with Hilton. I think part of it, I don't think I've ever had T.Y. Hilton on a team of mine in all the years playing fantasy football.
Yeah, and I haven't either. I never, to be honest,
I
never
see,
really,
what is it? I don't know what it is about
until last year. I didn't really look at him as a wide receiver 1. I always thought of him as a top end wide receiver 2, and just because I've used it in the other scenarios that we're just talking about, the different wide receivers, what positional rank they would be. But I mean, the past 3 years, he was 10th overall in wide receivers, then 22nd, and then 5th.
Yep.
And that was playing all 16 games. Actually, he missed 1 in 2014 when he was 10th. But so he's very, very durable. He hasn't been hurt. He gets a ton of yardage. But even last year, I mean, you look at his numbers, he had 91 catches for almost 1,500 yards. I mean, that is crazy elite yardage for a wide receiver, but he only had 6 touchdowns with that. And I don't necessarily see that TD rate going up any. And that yardage seems to be at the top too. That's why I feel like he's at the back end of the top 10, just because I feel like he's hit almost the limit. I mean, how many yards can you really get before you're just done, before that's as much as you can possibly get?
Pretty much. But if Luck's healthy, I think the guy's going to be great. It's just, man, I don't know.
Yeah, but
not down on him. But
that's why we didn't put him, at least that's why I didn't put him in the top 5 like he finished last year.
No, let's be honest. It's like, for some reason, he's just not a guy I get excited about. But that's not always a reason not to get somebody. Like, I was never excited about Doug Baldwin either. You know, that kind of thing. So.
Oh yeah.
But we'll talk about him in a minute after. A couple more players here. Number 10 is Michael Thomas. My 9th, your 10th. So we have the exact same top 10 players here. In Michael Thomas, it's just he should be the number 1 in New Orleans. He already had a great season last year. There's no Cooks. We know the reason why he's up there. And I don't know if his numbers are really going to increase much from where they were in a way, because when you look at it, his numbers, he was the number 1 receiver last year, numbers-wise, for the Saints. I can see it being very similar, and I see people thinking there's going to be this just major jump, major increase, but I don't think that's how Drew Brees works. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't lock into one target ever. And I don't think he needs to.
No, yeah, I agree. And last year he did have 92 receptions. So, I mean, how many more catches do you think the guy's going to get? He had 9 touchdowns with a little over 1,100 yards. Like, rookie season, I totally understand why people are getting so excited. The guy showed up. I mean, he was unbelievable as a rookie. But now you are actually going. I mean, he technically was a number 2, so he was getting thrown to like he was a number 1, but he was going against the number 2 CBs coverage. They were, keying on Brandon Cooks a lot, and like you said, Brees really does spread the ball around, probably more than any other quarterback. He does doing it too. So I don't see Michael Thomas getting too many more receptions. Maybe he'll get to 100, something like that. But I think you have to taper expectations, because I think it was also the fact that no one's seen this kid before, and the fact that he was so good caught everyone by surprise. So defenses really couldn't scheme around it for the first half of the year.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think anybody quite saw that year coming. I mean, I was a Michael Thomas fan there, but I became a Michael Thomas fan. It was already like week 8, week 9 after we'd seen it. It wasn't something you quite expected, but I mean, I don't see, he's a guy, I don't see his numbers going down. I think he's safe, very safe. I just don't see a huge increase, but I don't see a decrease either, so.
Yeah, yep. And
he's a very safe option.
I really, really like the guy, but I think it's premature to, kind of anoint this guy as the next number 1 overall wide receiver.
Yep. No, I completely agree with that. Now, number 11 is a guy that we are probably going to have ranked a lot higher, I think, than consensus here. Actually, probably quite a bit higher, and that's Keenan Allen. He's your 11th player. He's my 13th, so we're not too far off there. But, I mean, we were seeing him down at 20th there for a while, and it's all about the injury concern. But, honestly, I don't have any injury concerns right now. I really don't. He seems to be healthy. All the news has been good. There doesn't seem, have you heard anything that just negative-wise about the injury, anything to be concerned about?
No, I've only heard positive things, him working out, him running, he's cutting at full speed now, different stuff like that. So I really don't have any worries either. And really he did his past injury, something to kind of worry about, but, it's the same kind of thing that AJ just went through. So, and before that it was a lacerated spleen, which is completely just flukish, right? How it's not going to affect you playing later on. It's just one of the things that happened, and you miss time for it.
Then right now his ADP is wide receiver 19 right now, and if you're getting him at that, I think you're getting a steal. I really do. And you just picked him up in our auction the other night as your 3rd receiver. That is just Keenan Allen as a 3rd receiver. That is you can't get any better than that. I don't feel like. And the way he's going is sometimes you can get that because he's just not being valued there, which I don't understand it. I think sometimes people get too worried about injuries. This isn't like Sammy Watkins is ranked 4 spots ahead of him in ADP right now. Sammy Watkins, I do personally like Sammy Watkins this year, but he has foot injuries that seem to linger. That's a concern. That's a big concern. That's something to be worried about. Keenan Allen hasn't had these injuries to be that concerned about, I feel like. It's just a different thing. So I don't see how can you have Sammy Watkins 4 spots ahead of Keenan Allen?
Yeah, for me, that's hard to swallow. I think Sammy Watkins is incredible talent, but I worry about his health far more than I worry about Keenan Allen's.
Yep.
And just to give a little background, too, because I know Keenan Allen has been hurt the past 2 years, so you kind of forget about him. But in 2013, when he was a rookie, he really came out of nowhere. He played 15 games. He got over 1,000 yards receiving and 8 touchdowns. And that was still when Antonio Gates was at his prime, or, kind of at the end of his prime. And they had other wide receivers there. He wasn't the number 1 guy. And then the next year, he played 14 games and, kind of had a regression a bit. So he did miss 2 games, but he ended up with almost 800 yards receiving and then 4 TDs. The following years, when he got hurt with that lacerated spleen, he made it through 8 games, but he was just going nuts. So he had 67 receptions for 725 yards and 4 touchdowns already, and that was in half a season. And then, obviously, last year he played half a game, had 6 catches for 63 yards and blew out his knee.
Let's break that down between over 16 games. How amazing would that be?
Yeah. So that's the thing. He will be the number 1 wide receiver. We don't know what's going to happen to Mike Williams.
It doesn't sound promising for this year.
No. And the guy is a target monster, especially in PPR. I think this guy is going to be incredibly deadly. I think he's going to be closer to that 8 touchdowns, and I think he can put up really, really good yardage.
Yep.
I think this offense is just built to kind of explode, and it's going to give him a lot of room just to run wild.
Yep. I agree. 100%. I think we're the podcast of Keenan Allen, I think. It's one of his biggest advocates. And I think he's as a wide receiver 2, he's probably the best, safest option. He's a perfect wide receiver 2. And I guess for you, a wide receiver 3, which is even better. But it just, I don't see that many better options, more safer. Maybe except for this next guy, he's probably just as safe as Doug Baldwin, number 12. He's my 12th, your 13th. He's probably just about as safe as Keenan Allen, I would think, in that kind of role. I mean, Doug Baldwin, again, I said like T.Y. Hilton, he's kind of a guy, I guess he's more on the boring side to me, as you would say. I never have him on my teams, but this year, I've really been looking at him a lot more. And I personally think Russell Wilson's going to have a little bit of a bounce back if he's healthy. I think Doug Baldwin will be the recipient of that, or at least keep his numbers where they've been. You know what I mean? I don't see Doug Baldwin jumping up anything, but I don't see him going down. If he stays where he's been, that's a great wide receiver 2 option.
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, the past 2 years, he's ranked 7th overall in wide receiver and then 10th. And it's kind of funny because people will always sleep on this guy. What I consider a very unsexy pick. So, yep. He's not a very large wide receiver. He's not doesn't put up prolific yards, and he just does everything really, really well. And he happens to be, Russell Wilson's favorite target. So last year he had 94 receptions, a little over 1,100 yards, and 7 TDs. I think that's very, very safe to say that's about what he's going to do again. And I still don't know who the number 2 receiver. I mean, but
maybe Paul Richardson, man. Paul Richardson. I'm telling you,
the wide receiver 2 has never really put up major numbers.
No, it's
but
not
with Jimmy
matter
Graham,
too much.
Yeah, but with Jimmy Graham, I think that's been a nice addition for them because I think that helps take a little pressure off of him. And it seems like he just strives under the pressure of being a number 1 that's constantly overlooked.
Yep.
So, I like you said, I think he's very, very safe. That's one that you're going to pick and everyone is like, ooh, I wish I had him. But he's going to be on your roster every single week. He's going to put up numbers, and you're going to be really, really glad you had him.
Yeah, and again, it's a great wide receiver, too. It's probably some of these other guys we're going to talk about here, as we end off the list, and these last 3 guys, these 3 are a little bit more risky, I think, sometimes. Number 13 is DeAndre Hopkins, my 11th, your 15th. That 11 ranking, I'm already looking at that like, man, I think I might want to drop him. I mean, I did this ranks I finalized them a couple hours ago. And I already think maybe I want to drop DeAndre behind Keenan and Doug Baldwin, which they became in the ranks thanks to you. But, I guess my thought with DeAndre there at 11, it's just there is some huge potential if he has just a competent quarterback there. He seems to like, if you've heard the news coming out, he seems to like Tom Savage there. And we've already ranked it as such. We think Savage should be the guy. I think we both ranked it that way. And I think Savage will start as the quarterback. And if DeAndre Hopkins wants Tom Savage to be the quarterback, I think Tom Savage should be the quarterback this year. That's kind of how I see that one to be. But you've ranked him a little bit lower than me. I guess it's just the hesitation is just how bad last year was, and if they don't have a good quarterback situation.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be honest. I don't think it's going to be as bad as Osweiler was, but it's still Tom Savage. I mean, we don't know a lot about this guy. Yep. As far as I know, he wasn't even prolific in college, and now you're expecting him to put up big numbers in the NFL. I think he can be better for Hopkins, but I think you're kind of dreaming if you think that this will allow Hopkins to return to, was it 2014 when he was 6th wide receiver overall?
Or was 2015? 15, yep.
15, so only 2 years ago. So I think, but this is the great part. So if it was purely on talent, this guy would be a top 10 wide receiver without a doubt, probably top 5.
Oh yeah.
Really, when you're handcuffed by your quarterback. So last year he was 38th. I mean, very pedestrian, and you had to draft him like he was a top 7, top 5 guy.
And he played all 16, didn't he?
He did, yeah. He hasn't missed a game yet in his career,
man.
So that's good.
Man, yeah, but he just needs somebody to throw the ball that can do it. And I don't know. Maybe Savage can do it. I don't know.
So
it worries me. It's like actually looking at this, but that's. Man, maybe he's completely ranked here because of potential, and maybe that's not the way to do it in a way. It's a little worrisome.
I think this is probably around the area where you would want to get him. And I think you would have to get him probably around here because I don't think he's going to drop too much farther because people will have love for him because he's so athletic. But he scares me a lot. I think he comes with a lot of worry that week to week he's not going to produce like he could if he had a better quarterback.
Well, and we have him 13th, and he is ADP 13 right now. So we have him right there where he's actually is being drafted. So we're right on there. But then we'll move to the next guy. It's number 14, it's Alshon Jeffrey. He's your 12th. He's my 15th. And, again, this is another one that just there's some question marks. He's been injured a lot. He's on a new offense. I mean, it's tough because you don't really know what to expect. And, again, this is another – it feels like we got some of these guys here that are completely based off these guys could be this good if everything – everything doesn't have to fall right. They just have to be pretty decent. And Alshon's great. It's just can he stay healthy?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you said it. I mean, the guy is incredibly talented. So in 2013, he played his first full season, right? And he was the number 9th wide receiver. And then he was the 12th in 2014. And then the injuries started mounting up. He only played 9 games in 2015 and then only 12 last year. So when he's healthy, he is worth every penny. He's amazing. And, he played with Cutler. Very kind of, fine quarterback, especially for him. Big arm. I think Wentz is going to lean on him very, very heavily. And if he stays healthy, he is a very safe player to have in the top 15. And he could easily make it in the top 10. That's how good he is. He will be a red zone threat. I mean, he's 6'4", 230 pounds. The guy is huge, and he has great hands. So, I mean, do you bank on him missing, 4 games, or do you bank him pretty much playing the entire season? That's what it's going to come down to.
Well, and I think the reason you can take risks like guys like Hopkins maybe and Alshon here as like wide receiver 2s is we feel like, and we'll get into this in the next wide receiver episode, is these wide receiver 3s you can get. There's a lot of safe wide receiver 3s. So you can kind of take a chance on one of these guys and hope they break out and you really get something special. And then you get a wide receiver 3 and a wide receiver 4 that if for some reason doesn't work out, they probably slide right into your lineup, no problem.
Yeah. And I do have to say, I like the fact that he's kind of betting on himself because he is on a 1-year contract. Yep. So if the guy doesn't play, he's going to be hurting to sign another major contract. So I feel like anytime you put the ball in these guys' hands, no pun intended, but when you put the ball in, they're going to show up and they're going to make sure that they stay healthy and they do what they have to do in order to succeed because otherwise their careers could be cut short. And let's be honest, that's the last thing in the world that these competitors want.
All right, one last guy. Number 15. It's going to be Brandon Cooks. You're number 14. He's my 17th. I have a couple guys ahead of him, but I mean, obviously, they're very interchangeable right here, I'd say. And again, Brandon Cooks, another player in a new situation. There's not really the injury concern here. He's just always been a boom or bust player. A little bit. He's been a little better than I wouldn't say he's like a Deshaun Jackson type. I think he's better than that. But what should we expect with Cooks in New England? I mean, I don't quite see him being Randy Moss, 2007 or whatever that year was. But I don't quite see him being Brandon Cooks of the Saints either. You know what I mean? It's not – I don't know what to expect with Brandon Cooks in that New England. I guess I just don't know what to expect from New England.
Yeah, it's a little bit foggy for this one. I think we all agree that he's a talented wide receiver. He's not a huge guy. He's not really a red zone threat. But, I mean, last year he did have 8 touchdowns, and he was closing in on 1,200 yards, and that was really on 78 receptions. So there's definitely room to grow. So you can kind of see how deadly he is because the guy can get a lot of yards. I mean, he is a big threat guy because of his speed and route running. I think he's a good fit in New England, but it really worries me to push him up the ranks because of that. Because once again, much like Breeze, Brady doesn't care who he throws it to. And you still have Julian Edelman there who gets a lot of targets because he catches everything, very, usually intermediate routes. So if Cooks kind of finds his groove or his role in that offense where he can, especially if it's going to be kind of a bigger play guy, man, the sky is the limit for him. He really is. Once again, he's not going to be ready, but at the same time, once again, he could be a guy that skyrockets up here. But to draft him higher than he is right now, I think that would be a little bit of blind luck.
Yeah, and I mean, that offense is going to be ridiculous. I mean, just thinking about that. If you have a healthy Gronk with Cooks and Edelman and all those receivers, all those running backs, I mean, it's going to be really, really good. I just don't know what that means individually, except for Tom Brady and Gronk are about the only two you can really expect huge seasons for if they're healthy. It's just the other ones, they're going to have, like Brandon Cooks, like if you're playing like a best ball league where, you basically just get their best weeks, he's a great option for that. It's just in a regular league, like, we usually talk about, it's hard sometimes to pick those weeks. So that's your only hesitation with it. But maybe he's going to be completely different and he's going to be there every week. So we'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah, it did feel like him and Michael Thomas kind of traded off and on.
Yep.
Yeah, you wonder if since that he doesn't really have a guy that's like Michael Thomas on the other side of him, much more conservative, great hands, Edelman kind of guy, where it's more of a possession guy, even though he's a smaller wide receiver. You're wondering if this will allow him to kind of dominate all of those longer throws that they might be able to squeak out, especially when they're trying to make sure that they, keep Gronk in check, which is, how the Patriots mismatch every single person on the field.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that's it for our top 15 wide receivers. Got through that one pretty decently. Hopefully everyone bears with us as we, have a little bit of the different recording setup. So hopefully everything still sounds good for everybody and get the good info out there for you guys. We have, 3 more episodes this week. I think we're going to do a little, auction draft review, kind of talk about the draft we did, but more in the context of, things to watch for. We'll not finish up wide receivers. We're going to go top 50. We're going to go top 30 receivers on our Thursday episode. We're actually going to finish up receivers next week. We'll keep going up to 60, but pretty much we're going to keep going for a while on receivers. There's so many of them. And we'll also have a mailbag. So if you have your mailbag questions, make sure you get them into us. But other than that, I think that's all we got for today. We'll talk to you guys next time.